Hey guys, this is Jason with Outside Pulse. I wanted to talk to you today about hiking, specifically tips for beginners just starting out on their hiking journey. Sometimes beginning hikers will actually overestimate their abilities when they're first starting out. The thing to keep in mind is that it's going to take a lot more energy when you're hiking on trails than when you're hiking on flat ground. Say walking through your neighborhood. So when there's a lot of elevation change and the footing isn't as sure, you're going to expend more energy while you're walking on the trails. So it's important to just take it easy, understand where you're at a fitness level and work up from there. One thing that you can actually try when you're just starting out or you're a beginning hiker is to actually look for a trail that makes a loop instead of an out and back type trail. That way you can make a loop, see how things are going, and if you feel good, maybe do another loop. But if you're tired or overexerted, you can call it a day and maybe work up the next time doing that second loop. When you're first starting out as a beginning hiker, it's always a good idea to know your surroundings and know your trails. Most state and local governments, if you're going to be hiking in a national park or a state park, they have excellent PDF maps that will show you where all the hiking trails are. Print that out so you have it as a backup and you have an idea and know what you're getting into before you get on the trail. Look for things like entry points, how long the trail is, the elevation change while you're on the trail, anything that you can learn that will let you know what you're getting into as a beginning hiker is always better. Tip number 3 is always hike with a buddy and let someone know where you're going to be. So in this one, there's actually 2 parts to it. Number 1, it's always better to hike with somebody than to hike alone. That way, in case something does happen on the trails, there's somebody there that either can go get help or can provide help to you, as opposed to if you were just out by yourself and hiking alone, twisting your ankle or something like that becomes a much bigger deal when you're all by yourself. Second part of that is to let someone know where you're going to be. So if you're going to hike, especially for 2 or 3 hours or more, always let somebody know, a friend, a family member, what have you, say, hey, I'm going to be hiking for the next 2 or 3 hours. When I get back home, I'll check in with you. That way, in case something does happen and you don't check in, they know where you are and can come looking for you. Tip number 4 is to take care of your feet. And by this, I mean you want to invest in a good pair of hiking boots as well as a good pair of hiking socks, something with a thick material, preferably not cotton, but instead wool or a synthetic material. Wearing a pair of tennis shoes and a thin pair of cotton socks is not a good match when you're hiking because they're just not meant to hold up to, the rigors of trails and hiking. You're much more likely to injure yourself or get blisters or twist an ankle because you just don't have the support your ankles and your feet need when you're hiking along rugged trails. Tip number 5 as a beginning hiker is to check the weather before you head out. Always know what you're getting into when you're hiking. It doesn't mean that you need to hike in, beautiful 75-degree weather every time you go hiking, but just know what you're getting into. So if there's a forecast for rain or windy weather, you can dress appropriately for any type of weather you might encounter while you're hiking. The 6th tip for a beginning hiker is to make sure you have the appropriate gear you need when you're hiking. Now, obviously, if you're going on a beginning hike, it's 1 or 2 miles and only a couple hours, you don't need extensive amounts of gear for that kind of a hike. But it's still a good idea to have some basic things with you so that, you're prepared while you're hiking. Some things that you might want include a compass, certainly a map of the area, preferably one that has the trails that you're hiking on. Also water and maybe some type of a trail mix or energy and things like that. That way you've got some basic necessities with you in case the trail takes a little bit longer or you run into some issues. You'll have some things with you that might help you out. Tip number 7 is to look the part when you're a beginning hiker. Now, this doesn't mean you need to go out and spend a fortune on the latest and greatest hiking gear or clothing. It just means that you want to be dressed appropriate for the weather. Another helpful tip also is to dress in layers. That way you could start out with, maybe, a shirt and a jacket over top of that, or maybe a sweatshirt. And if it starts to get warm or you start to warm up, you can shed some of those layers to keep yourself cool. Vice versa. Also, if you start to get cool, you can add some layers back on. That way it helps to regulate your temperature while you're hiking, keeping you comfortable while you're on the trails. Number 8 as a beginning hiker is to always set the pace at an appropriate speed. And what I mean by this is oftentimes beginning hikers will just charge off when they're first starting on the trail only to be exhausted later on. So make sure when you're setting the pace on the trail to do a nice, even, steady pace. That way you'll have the energy that can carry you through to the very end of the trail. Number 9 is to get social. And by this I mean, don't think that hiking needs to be this solo activity. It's always more fun to do things in a group. So I would recommend trying to find some people that are also interested in hiking and go out together. One of the websites that I really like for this is meetup.com. I've used it a ton, and basically it's a website that lets you meet like-minded people that are also interested in the same activity in your local area. I've used the website several times and met a ton of great people that also enjoy hiking. So you should definitely check it out. I'll link it in the description below. But the main point here is just to have fun when you're hiking, and it's always more fun to do it when you're with a group of people. Final tip as a beginning hiker, tip number 10 is to leave no trace when you're hiking. And by this I mean whatever you bring on the trails with you, make sure you take with you when you leave. It's all of our responsibilities to keep the natural environments that we hike in as pristine, as beautiful as possible, and untouched by man. So just remember, if you're bringing something on the trail, make sure you take it with you. That way the trail is just as beautiful for you as it is for the next person. And that's my top 10 hiking tips for beginning hikers. I hope you all found the information helpful. One other thing I wanted to mention to you is that I actually wrote a really informative article for beginning hikers on my website, outsidepulse.com. I'll link it in the description below, but basically it's a whole article for beginning hikers about what you need to bring and how to go about starting hiking. So you should definitely check it out. Other than that, I hope you all have a great day, and I wish you all many happy hiking adventures.